Welcome back to episode 96 of the Hockey Cards Gongshow podcast. My name is Josh. I'm here with Troy. What's going on, buddy?
Not a whole lot. Just got done mowing the yard. It's time to record. How you doing?
Doing good. We're usually very close by, within a mile or two, but I'm up in northern Minnesota for the 4th of July holiday weekend. My whole family's out at the lake. I'm in my brother's kitchen, who has no air conditioning. It's hotter than can be up here, and I'm dying. I'm basically flop sweating doing a podcast in his kitchen, but other than that, it's great. Beautiful weather out at the lake. Is it hot down in the Twin Cities today as well?
Yep. Very hot, very muggy. Good old typical Minnesota summer humidity. So we're making it. We're surviving.
So do you want to explain how you've basically ruined my life?
I did ruin your life. Yeah, so if you listen to, 2 episodes ago when we announced it, that I had a personal pickup of a puppy. So we got a second dog. And of course, Josh and his wife came over to see it. And now it looks like Josh is getting a dog.
Oh, yeah. It's already signed, sealed, and delivered. Haven't picked it up yet, but money's been sent. And yeah, you get a dog. And now all it takes is my wife to come over and have it sit on her lap and sleep for 2 hours. And that was it. The next day, she was sobbing. I want a dog. Please can I have a dog? And of course, right. As we all do, we just want to make our families happy. And so, yeah, I'm going to have a dog soon, and we're going to share the nightmare of puppies together. So there could be a lot of yipping on the podcast in the near future. Happy 4th of July, of course, to everyone in the U.S. that is listening to the show. It was just Canada Day, too, I think on the 1st of the month. So happy Canada Day to all our Canada listeners. And I always feel bad now, Troy, because last time I checked, we have 63 countries where people listen to our show, and kind of want to acknowledge everyone's holidays and special events. And so if there's something going on in your country this weekend that's significant, happy whatever that day is to you too. Or do you know something that's happening?
Well, here's the deal. I know a guy right now that's in Ghana, in Africa, and I forgot about that. So I'm going to text him to listen to our show, because that would mean we get every continent if he can listen to us in Africa. That's the one we don't have yet.
We're not too proud. Beg and plead for someone to listen to us in Africa. If you caught our last show, which was actually technically on last Wednesday night, not Thursday, we did a YouTube live covering the first, 10 or 11 picks of the NHL draft. And we were lucky enough to have on WHL Super Scout George Ross from the Spokane Chiefs, who was amazing. And we really need a guy like him when we're doing a show like that otherwise it's just you and me reading a paragraph or two about these guys. And he knew most of these guys really inside and out. What did he say? He had seen Connor Bedard play in person when he was 12 years old or something like that. That's
pretty nuts. Yeah.
Pretty incredible. So thank you again to George for doing that. We also tried a little bit something different from a format perspective, where we recorded and did the show live on YouTube and then posted the podcast. So if you like that format, you want to see us do more video podcasts as well, I think that's something that's likely to come or be a bigger part of what we do going forward, be sure to let us know. Also want to mention, seen a lot of people in the Gong Show crew. We don't have a name for our listeners. Part of me thinks that's cheesy, but I'm just going to call it Gong Show crew for now. Posting pictures of their new leather wallets made from NHL goalie equipment that come, of course, from Second String Leather Company, who's a sponsored partner of our show. If you guys haven't checked these out, these wallets are fantastic. Basically, every single one is a one-of-one art piece that allows you to take the NHL memorabilia with you every day. And that's one of the things I've enjoyed the most about, I think, their products. So I have an Andrea Vasilevsky wallet that has the same blocker as in his Young Guns, which I literally point out to everyone. And whether I'm at the gas station and I open up my wallet, or I'm at the cabin with family and I've been able to show it off all weekend, and everyone just thinks it's so cool. And so if you're a hockey card collector, I think it's definitely something that you need to go and check out for yourself. You can do so at Second String's website and secondstringleather.com. And what's really cool is they've given us a promo code. It is GONGSHOW15, where you can save 15% on your order. Even if it's on sale, you just get an extra 15% off. So that's pretty awesome. Okay, last thing before we get started, too, is just a reminder that the Hockey Cards Gongshow podcast is a Patreon podcast. That means we rely on the support of listeners like you to help us cover our expenses, continue to produce more and hopefully better hockey card content, and help us fund initiatives to grow the hockey hobby, even in a small way. There's still time. I think there's like a handful of spots left, and our out of 99 support level tier, be one of the first 99 supporters of the Hockey Cards Gongshow podcast. Not only do you help support our show, it's $5 a month, so hopefully not too taxing there, but it really does help and definitely adds up and helps us cover our expenses. You also get access to our Discord server, and you can chat with us and everyone else that is there. 100 plus people now on the Discord server. It's a really great community. Learn a lot from the people there, and think you would really enjoy that too. Super easy to do. To support us, all you got to do is go to our website, hockeycardsgongshow.com, and there at the top, there's a Become a Patron link that takes you to Patreon there. If you want to just go to the Patreon website at patreon.com, you can search for Hockey Cards Gong Show. There's a link in the show description for the podcast app you're listening to us on, or maybe watching us on YouTube. There's a link in the description there too. And then finally, in our TikTok and Instagram profiles, there's a link in our link tree there as well. We do have 2 new patrons since our last show that I want to mention, King Breaks and Wildflower Breaks. So King Breaks is all one word, King Break. Instead of S, though, it's with a Z, and then wild_flower_breaks. Go ahead and follow those guys on Instagram and welcome them to our show community if you can. All right, Troy, you ready for the game plan?
On today's show, we will begin with the greatest NHL player to wear number 95, as we did not do the greatest player to wear each number segment last show. Then we will roll right into the greatest NHL player to wear number 96. So it's basically a 2-for-1, and I tried to keep them both short, so we're not here for 30 minutes going over 95 and 96.
It's a 2-for, Troy.
It's a 2-for. Then we will recap the NHL draft and look at some trades and free agency signings that have happened so far. Then it's off to hobby news, followed by a 2022-23 rookie class hockey card review. We finish the show with new product releases and listener mailbag. All right, Josh, since we didn't do it last episode, I am going back. We are number 95, the greatest NHL player to wear number 95. Per the Hockey Writers' greatest player to wear each number article is Alexei Mrazov.
No clue who that is.
Yeah,
does that surprise you?
No, it doesn't surprise me. I was trying to think. I mean, Alexei Mrazov, I thought Penguins. It was Penguins, but I could tell you nothing about him. That's all I knew is that he played for the Penguins. Now, in fairness, this number 95 probably goes to Matt Duchene in a couple of years. But there was a caveat. Duchene has only been wearing number 95 since 2017 with Ottawa. So the Hockey Writers article mentioned that this is probably Duchene's eventually. But for now, we're stuck with Alexei Mrazov, right winger from Moscow, Soviet Union. Mrazov was the 24th overall pick in the 1995 NHL Entry Draft by the Pittsburgh Penguins. Mrazov played in 451 regular season games over a 7-season NHL career. Played all 7 of his NHL seasons with the Pittsburgh Penguins. For his awards and accomplishments, we have nothing for the NHL. It's kind of funny that you're the greatest NHL player to wear a number, but you had no awards or any recognition at all. He did, however, win the gold medal twice with Russia at the World Championships.
I feel like 95 is a decent hockey number too, isn't it?
Yeah, I would try to think about it. It's like, who do you know that's number 95? I forgot about Duchene, but he's like the one. Over the course of his career in the regular season, Mrazov had 84 goals, 135 assists for 219 points. He made the playoffs in 4 of his 7 NHL seasons, compiling 4 goals, 5 assists for 9 points in 39 playoff games played. Mrazov had 3 seasons of 30-plus points and 1 season of 20-plus goals. Best season of his career from a point standpoint was his last season in the NHL, which was 2003-04, where Mrazov had 16 goals and 34 assists for 50 points in 75 games played, which is pretty interesting. Now, if I remember right, I believe the lockout was the following year.
Oh,
he went back to Russia and just stayed.
Never came back, and he actually played for a long time in Russia in the KHL. I believe that's what happened. I didn't write it down like an idiot. I didn't put that part in. Could he come back? I don't know.
Yeah, no kidding. So the little blurb, because we're not going to go too in-depth on all of these just to keep the show moving. Mrazov never really reached the potential of what the Penguins thought he could be when taking him in the first round. He was usually buried on the 3rd or 4th line due to the amount of talent already in Pittsburgh. While he did get off to a couple strong starts during a couple of his NHL seasons, eventually those would get derailed by injuries. He had not a good run with getting injuries, had a broken wrist, some other stuff that kind of derailed some of his seasons where he started out pretty hot. Right now, he is the current president of the KHL in Russia. All right,
Does he personally name Putin to the All-Star team every year?
He's the guy that brings Putin in and says, guys, please, you cannot touch this. Do not touch Putin. Let him score 15 goals. Don't touch him. Don't trip him. Who is it? Someone ran into him that one time. They just plowed him over. Probably got sent to the gulag right afterwards.
Yeah, no kidding.
All right, fun, interesting facts. Okay, this one's going to be a little long. Morozov earned the nickname the Devil Killer for his notorious success against the New Jersey Devils. In fact, Martin Brodeur, in an interview before a Penguins-Devils game, joked that he had nightmares of Morozov each night before his club would play the Penguins. Brodeur also stated in an interview with Dan Patrick that Morozov is the player that he would not like to see coming in on him on a breakaway, adding, "The kid's got probably over 25% of his career goals on me. It's unbelievable." When asked why or to explain Morozov's success, Brodeur said, "I don't know. If you figure it out, please tell me. When he shoots the puck, I never catch it really clean. When he's going to make a pass, I think he's shooting. When he's shooting, I think he's making a pass. The guy's in my kitchen. He's in my head. I can't get rid of him."
That's an amazing quote. That's one of the better quotes I've ever seen.
It's awesome. And so, of course, that 25% number stuck in my head. So I went and looked it up. I have a StatHead subscription. I got to finally use it. So I looked it up. Of Morozov's 88, and that includes regular season and playoffs, 88 goals, 14 of them, or 16%, were scored against Martin Brodeur. Still a high number. By far the most of any goalie. So I thought that was really interesting. So Brodeur was right. It was close. It wasn't 25%. But that was really, really great quote and really fun to see. And then our final fun fact, Josh, Morozov scored his first NHL goal on his first shot, on his first shift of his first game as a Penguin. There
Is
you
that
go.
like the fifth time one of these guys?
It's amazing how many guys. Yeah, I guess that's why they're the greatest. But anyway, so let's look at his rookie card real quick. PSA, he only has 3 graded cards ever. I'm not even going to look at it. BGS, he had 13 graded cards ever. However, 6 of those are his 1994-95 Select number 158. It's his rookie card. That's what I'm going with because it was the most graded copies. It's got on the front Mexico Cup. And I was like, what? What is this? Then once you read it, you get it. And so there was the 1994 La Copa Mexico. That was the 4th annual under-18 ice hockey tournament, which then became the Ivan Halinka Memorial Tournament. And for our astute listeners, that is now called the Gretzky Halinka Tournament. You heard George mention that. It's a tournament now that looks at under-18s, and it's a big deal, really big deal. But at this time, they held it in Mexico. Of this select card that his rookie card is, 6 graded copies. 3 of them are BGS 9.5, so it has a gem rate of 50%. Here comes Card Ladder to the rescue. Last sale I could find of a BGS 9.5 was on September 25th, 2005. Yes, 2005 on eBay for $11.96. That's it.
Crazy.
That's all I could find. That's what we got for Morozov. All right, let's go on to number 96. The greatest NHL player to wear number 96 is Thomas Holmstrom. Again, this is another one. Holmstrom was a great player, but there's a little caveat with this one, too, is that we have a really good number 96 playing right now in Mikko Rantanen, who eventually may take over. He would have to have some pretty good longevity and keep up some good scoring pace in his career. I put here, time will tell, but it's something to remember. But right now, it's
Rantanen had 50 goals last year. Not too shabby.
Not too shabby at all. So right now it's Thomas Holmstrom. All right, Thomas Holmstrom, left winger from Pittia, Sweden, I think is how you say it.
Beautiful town.
Beautiful town in Sweden. I've never been there. Holmstrom was the 257th overall pick in the 1994 NHL Entry Draft by the Detroit Red Wings. I'd say they got a good value there. 257th overall pick. That's crazy.
That is crazy.
Holmstrom played in 1,026 regular season games over a 15-season NHL career. Played all 15 of his NHL seasons with the Detroit Red Wings.
They have to lead the league in NHL history
of players
as far as guys that have played more than 1,000 games and played their entire career with them. You have Lidstrom, Yzerman, Holmstrom. Did Zetterberg play his whole career in?
I would think so, but who knows? I can't remember off the top of my head. I have to look it up.
It is pretty impressive.
That should be a research project. Shouldn't take that long to look up. For his awards and accomplishments, 4-time Stanley Cup champion with Detroit, 1-time Olympic gold medalist with Sweden in 2006, and his Stanley Cups were 97, 98, 2002, and 2008. Over the course of his regular season career, Holmstrom had 243 goals, 287 assists for 530 points. He made the playoffs in all 15 of his NHL seasons, compiling 46 goals, 51 assists for 97 points in 180 playoff games played.
He never missed a playoff.
Never missed a playoff.
15 years. Wow.
That's awesome. Get that playoff bonus check every year. Got to like that.
There you go.
Holmstrom had 11 seasons of 30-plus points and 5 seasons of 20-plus goals. Best season of his career from a point standpoint was his 2005-06 season, where Holmstrom had 29 goals, 30 assists for 59 points in 81 games played. Holmstrom was widely considered one of the NHL's best at screening the opposition's goaltender, as well as for his physical presence in front of the opposition net. A lot of video on him. Again, we talk about these guys that would sit in the front of the net, get beat up, pounded on, cross-checked in the back. Actually, one thing I did read about him, he never really retaliated. This is a guy who just took it and did his best and didn't score that much, but was such a presence in front of the net that he drew away defenders to him because he was just an immovable object. And they said that a lot of goals that they were scored were actually called back because he was in the crease a lot of the times, which I thought was funny. I mean, not too many, but it just shows how hardworking he was in front of the net. For fun, interesting facts, Holmstrom ranks 7th all-time for regular season games played and 4th all-time for playoff games played for the Detroit Red Wings. So just to put you in where he's at.
That's a meaningful fact, given the team. If it was for like
the Wild,
the Coyotes or the Wild, I would say who cares? But I think that's meaningful.
Holmstrom was known to many fans in Detroit by the nickname of Homer, which makes sense. However, he acquired the nickname Demolition Man while playing in Sweden, where he was also called Holma. And the Demolition Man, I don't know if that was in Sweden, but I read a couple articles where they called him that in Detroit too, and because it was kind of his work ethic in front, how he kind of destroyed demolition.
Wasn't there a movie called Demolition Man?
I think so. It was that Sylvester Stallone? Is that it?
Yeah, I think so.
Sounds right.
Okay, so there's 3 nicknames: Homer, Demolition Man, and Holma. Rank them. What's Troy's favorite nickname?
I like Demolition Man and then Holma because it's Swedish, and Homer's last because that's an easy one. That's just off his name, right? And then
there you go.
Gabby Homer. All right.
Gabby.
Rookie card. 1996-97, Upper Deck, number 255. That's all it is. Nothing special about that one. PSA 10 has a population of 9 with a gem rate of 56%. Last sale was actually on March 11th, 2023, via eBay, verified in Terapeak, for $72.58 US. So, hey, there it is.
He's not in the Hall of Fame, though, right?
No.
Well, there's your double dose of the best player to wear each number in the honor of our episode number. We'll look forward to number 97 next week, where undoubtedly it'll be Jeremy Roenick, of course. Just kidding. I think we all know who it'll be. I haven't even verified that, but I'm pretty positive I know who it'll be. Okay, before we move on, I want to make a quick mention from Gong Show partner and sponsor Slab Sharks. Very grateful to them for supporting our show. Their current weekly eBay auction is live. As we've come to expect, Troy, there's some awesome cards in this week's auction. I was looking through the listings, I think it was yesterday morning, and a few stood out to me. There's a 2016 SP Authentic Austin Matthews Future Watch Auto Patch, a FWAP. I guess as we like to call it, hockey's stupidest acronym ever. Those, of course, out of 100, it's raw.
Oh, the FWAP, yeah.
The FWAP. Out of 100 raw.
I'm going to say this. You just got me off my game with that 97 comment. Be ready for controversy. That's all I'm going to tell you.
No.
It's the writer's article. I can change it. 20-year career.
Wow.
There you go, people.
You're going with Kaprizov.
I'm going with Kaprizov. I'm not changing it. I am not changing it.
No, you got to stay true to the bit.
Yep,
We're gonna
true to the bit.
It'll be the most controversial show ever. We'll get canceled, I'm sure. because of it, but it's amazing it hasn't happened yet.
All right, back to Slap Sharks. Back to Slap Sharks.
Slap Sharks auction. There's a 2016 SP Authentic Austin Matthews flop out of 100 raw. It's a really nice 3-break patch. I was going to say 3-color, but he's in a Maple Leafs uniform, so not possible, Troy. There's also a 2005, Troy, The Cup, Alexander Ovechkin, limited logos, rookie patch auto out of 50. Is that a good card? Maybe?
Sounds like a good card. I would say yes, it's a good card. Troy would like that card. Troy would like that card.
Oh, yeah. Good timing to get it, too. How about a 2012 Fleer Retro Wayne Gretzky red PMG out of 100? Maybe the best PMG there is. That 2012 Gretzky, maybe controversial there too, but I like it. Or a 2001 SP Authentic Gordie Howe Sign of the Times auto, where he, of course, has the Mr. Hockey inscription. Not bad. Just tons of great hockey cards, as always, in the Slab Sharks auction. Head to slabsharks.com for a link to the auction. Check them out for yourself. Place your bids before it ends this upcoming Thursday. And Troy, if you're a Canadian hockey card collector and ready to sell some of your cards for cash, why not make it easy on yourself and let Slab Sharks do all the work for you through their eBay consignment program? They will list your cards, answer all the buyer questions, hunt down payment, ship cards out. All you got to do is watch the money hit your account. Your cards will also be included in Slab Sharks' popular weekly auctions, where they ship to the U.S., in addition to Canada, giving you one of the biggest buyer pools possible for your cards. Again, go to slabsharks.com for complete consignment information, including payout rates. Well, we had the draft on Wednesday, and not much has happened since then. Just kidding. It seems like everything has happened since then, and trying to digest it a little bit, I think, over the last couple days. And what we decided to do is just throw the draft, all the trades and free agency in one big kind of pile and just do, I think, basically just sort of an update and try to make sense of it all, really, when it boils down to it. So we'll start with the draft. There's kind of a few updates since the draft happened last Wednesday and Thursday that stood out to me, Troy. We'll start with your guy, Connor Bedard. There's a website that writes about hockey players in the NHL called The Athletic. Have you ever heard of that website, Troy?
Yes, I have heard of it. I was saying it's in my dreams. I talk about that website way too much and read it way too much.
So our guy, Corey Prongman, who is a great writer, enjoy him a lot. He did a really great article and asked a number of NHL scouts and executives to rank the number one overall picks from the last 10 NHL entry drafts based on how they viewed each player coming into the draft. So not looking back based on how their careers panned out, but of the last 10 drafts, if all were drafted in the same draft, like how would you rank them as prospects? So I thought it was really interesting, and I'm going to go down from 10 to 1, and we'll see, Troy, where you think it's controversial or maybe that you agree or disagree with the scouts. So number 10, meaning the least desirable prospect, I guess, is Juraj Slafkovsky, last year's number 1. That shots fired or what? They had no respect for Slafkovsky. Basically, the reasoning that they gave was that Slafkovsky had, like whether it's World Championships or some of these tournaments, he had a really big tournament season, if you want to call it that. And then he just has ridiculous size and skill sets. He's like, 6'4". And so, but what he was missing was a really strong European club season.
Gotcha.
And I guess that's the reason. It doesn't mean that he won't turn out to be great, but that he was maybe one of the more sketchy number one prospects coming into it. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean to go panic sell all your Slafkovsky cards. It's just what scouts and GMs and execs thought of the guys coming into the draft. He could end up being awesome. At number 9, they had Aaron Ekblad, who is a big mobile two-way defenseman that's, of course, a good foundational element for any hockey team. I just don't think very sexy isn't going to put your team over the top. And so he is what he is. And I think that's kind of what he's been in the NHL, right? He's not a superstar, but you'd sure be happy to have him on your team. Number 8, they had Nico Hischier, who I thought this was interesting. The consensus was he was considered a very skilled and intelligent all-around player, but lacked a special dimension, and they had special in quotes. And I think that's kind of true, right? He's a really good player, but if you were going to list the most dynamic special NHL players, I don't think he would be in your top 10.
Well, I just look at that as they don't think he'll be a superstar.
Yeah, that's probably a good way to put it. Then at number 7, Troy, was your guy, Alexei Lafreniere.
Oh, Laffy.
He had a ton of hype, as we know. Sorry, Laffy collectors. Actually, do we want to take a moment of silence for all the Laffy collectors and the money they've lost at this point? Pretty bad. He came into the league after tearing up the CHL, and it was actually named the MVP of the World Juniors. They also, too, did put the Prongman in the article did point out, because how even though you're asking GMs to say, okay, evaluate these guys at the time of the draft, not based on recent, it's almost impossible to take out recency bias from it. And so that had to factor in somehow. And he's done this exercise a number of years. And he said that when they did the article in 2020, they had Laffy ranked at number 5, who was even ahead of Jack Hughes at that time. So you can see how a little bit the recency bias has played into there. At number 6, they had Owen Power, who, again, is another great foundational defensive piece for a team, but isn't going to fill up a highlight reel or a stat sheet. Number 5, Rasmus Dahlin, considered, in this case, the best defensive prospect probably in the last decade, because he's the highest rated defenseman that thought of when he was a prospect. That's kind of interesting that they view him ahead of Owen Power and Ekblad. Then you get to number 4, where Jack Hughes. What is pointed out there is like why he's a 4th is at the time, and this is very true, there was a concern about his size, which kind of was validated really in the first year or two with him getting hurt, and now he's pretty much overcame that, I guess. And number 3, Austin Matthews, who of course lit up the World Championships in his draft season, was widely regarded as an elite goal scorer with great puck skills, which has turned out to be true. He is definitely all of those things. Now, Troy, it starts to get interesting. So number 2 leaves 2 guys left that I'm sure most people know. And actually, this gets really interesting. So Connor Bedard is number 2. And you would think, naturally, well, was it close between McDavid and Bedard? No, it's actually from the scouts and GMs, it's more close as to who's the better prospect between Austin Matthews and Bedard. Some scouts prefer Matthews' size and confidence of his ability to play center in the NHL, while the edge was given to Bedard's more incredible offensive skill set. So I think some scouts do question, will he be big enough to be able to handle the responsibilities of an NHL center?
Yeah, I think it's still not decided where he's going to land. If he's going to land at wing or center, I think that's a huge differentiator for where he lands up in these rankings eventually in the future.
So they put Connor McDavid as number 1, Connie McDavie. Of the scouts and, of course, and executives that were polled, actually most didn't consider Bedard as a prospect on the same level as McDavid.
Interesting.
Well, both are very prolific players. In their opinion, McDavid has a clear edge in his athletic traits like his size and in his skating. They point out that while Bedard is a good skater, McDavid is the best skater in the world and is a far better skater than Bedard at 17, 18 years old, where Bedard is right now. This is where this gets nuts. And I was like, I had to sit and digest this for a minute. So in this article, again, this is feedback coming from NHL scouts and execs. And I'm just going to read the quote from the article here because I don't want to misrepresent it at all. So here starts the quote. For those reasons, most of the NHL voters did not view Bedard as a true generational prospect. They saw him as closer to Patrick Kane as a prospect at the same age.
We've kind of heard that too. Like McDavid had all the tools, even size and a skater. I do find it interesting, but I guess we'll see.
I think it's the size and the skating component is what's giving these guys pause. Now, they're probably the most qualified people in the world to have this opinion because they live, breathe in hockey and they're in the positions that they are because they know so much. But they're also wrong all the time too. That's the inexact science of any sport, and picking talent is you make just as many mistakes as you hit on people. And so it doesn't mean that they're going to be right and he's not a generational talent. Just haven't heard a lot of dissenting opinions on that lately. So I thought that was really interesting. Another thing I wanted to mention, Troy, is I saw an article that talked about how much Connor Bedard will make as the wonderkind, threw in a Ted Lasso reference there for you, number 1 overall draft pick in his rookie contract. So the maximum salary is actually $950,000 a year, but then you can add like a $95,000 signing bonus and then other player performance bonuses. And basically it's expected he'll make around $4.5 million in average annual value over a 3-year period. Not bad, of course, but when you compare it to some other sports, it's pretty crazy. So basically $13.5 million over 3 years. I looked up what Victor Wembanyama, the number one pick from the San Antonio Spurs in the NBA, will make this year. The number one, as collectively bargained in their CBA, the number one overall draft pick gets 4 years, $55.2 million. He's going to make more in his first season than Bedard will make in his whole first rookie contract.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So if you ever think that hockey's catching up to basketball, not quite at this point. Anything about Bedard before we move on to Adam Fantilli that you've observed over the last few days or thought was interesting?
No, I'm just waiting for training camp to start and all the stories to come out about how awesome he looks, and then for the season to start.
Me too. We'll move on to Adam Fantilli, and at the time he was drafted, it was still undecided whether he would return to Michigan for his sophomore season, but then on Saturday, really quick, it was announced that he, in fact, had signed his entry-level contract with the Columbus Blue Jackets, so he will have the chance to start at the NHL level. I looked actually through about 3 pages of Google News trying to find an article that gave some sort of indication as to what their thought is, whether he'll start the season in the AHL then or with the NHL. Couldn't find any reference, so I take that too. It'll just depend on how training camp goes and where they think he's at. But when you read the articles, though, and the quotes from the GM in Columbus, he said that they watched him all year in a ton of film, and they think with his size and ability that he's probably ready for the NHL level. And I don't know, do you think that you would, if you're Fantilli, would you rather play in the AHL or go back to Michigan? I think he would go back to Michigan. So it kind of leads me to speculate that they gave him at least a reasonable insurance that he would have a good chance to start the season in the NHL.
Yeah, I'd rather go back to Michigan and play college than go to the AHL. And I'm guessing, like you said, they've probably said you're a pretty good shot to make the team. Don't mess it up.
Did you see how many Wolverines are on that team too?
I didn't. Where they got like 5.
They've got I know they got Kent Johnson, Fantilli, Zach Werenski, and there's another guy that is slipping my mind at least. The super ironic thing there, of course, is that Columbus is the home of Ohio State University, whose arch nemesis is Michigan, and all the Michigan hockey players are now on their one pro sports team.
That's awesome.
So I think that's kind of funny. Okay, then I got to talk about this Matvei Michkov story. It's a little weird, and I'm not trying to be like tabloidy here, but this just blew my mind when I saw this the other day. So the young Russian phenom, quote unquote, fell to Philadelphia Flyers at the number 7 pick. Most are pretty excited. He's a supremely talented 17-year-old who is currently in the KHL, and it looks like nobody ever really knows at the KHL. It doesn't seem like it's like, do they have contracts? Are they public? Why is everything so secretive that not sure when he's going to come out? And I get why they didn't talk about this at the draft, but did you see the stories about his dad?
I didn't, but I just read through your little piece here, and holy cow.
It is crazy. I do want to say before I get into the story that there's a little bit of conjecture here and rumor, and not that we're starting it, but we're, I guess, secondhand reading it. So, take everything with a little bit of grain of salt. But apparently back in April 2nd of this year, Andrea Michkov, the 51-year-old father of Matvei, left the family house saying he'd be right back and never returned. So Troy's body was found later that month, basically floating in a pond near Sochi. And it's the circumstances of his disappearance and death that have some people speculating. So I found an article, and there's a reporter out of Montreal that is, I guess, putting it out there that Andrea Michkov was trying to invalidate his son's KHL contract so he could come over to the NHL sooner than later. And here's an interesting quote from that reporter. I'm going to read it out. Obviously, getting stories confirmed when it comes from Russia, you will understand that is difficult. But it seems that his father was trying to have the contract invalidated and get Matvei sent to North America quickly. That's why the story is going to be a bit quote unquote touchy, because we don't know if the young man is going to be forced to respect the contract he apparently signed, because nobody can clearly say if he really signed this contract and if the length is 2 years, 3 years, 4 years that is on his contract. So there's a little bit of dot connecting, I think, that the reporter is doing there and speculating that, well, is the disappearance of Matvei's father related to him trying to get out of the KHL contract? And you got the whole Russia thing. I don't really have an opinion one way or the other what happened, but what a bonkers situation, huh?
Yeah, that's crazy. Again, it's all speculation, but wow. That's true. That's nuts. Makes you think that if he wants to get out of that contract right now, this would weigh heavily on him that the situation happened. What other family members does he have currently? I know we were kind of joking when they drafted him. Flyers need to send over the car and talk to McGillney, figure out how to smuggle him out of there. But this would worry me a little bit.
And no disrespect to the Russian people, because I know that they're great. It's just a weird situation over there. It made me kind of think of, because I always live my life thinking of weird hypothetical situations. So let me ask you this question, Troy. Let's say you are a hockey player who got cut from your NHL team, and the NHL isn't going to be a possibility. You have $1 million a year offer to play in the KHL or $500,000 a year offer to play in Sweden. Where are you going?
I'd probably go to Sweden. I just don't want to be, I wouldn't want to be over there right now.
I think I'd be terrified the entire time in Russia, and it wouldn't be worth the money.
Yep.
So I would agree with you. Weird situation there, but hopefully it works out for Flyer fans because they deserve to have a young superstar. And sorry for him too losing his dad. That's a really crappy situation, especially at a big time in your life. Okay, so not only did the draft, but there's also a number of NHL trades in the past few days. And when we talk about trades and free agency, I think the tricky part in all this is trying to figure out what hobby impact, if any, is going to come out of all these.
I'll just say I'll ruin it. Not a lot.
Yeah. There was no Matthew Tkachuk, Jonathan Huberdeau trade, or even Johnny Gaudreau signing yet. And so I think even where there could be impact, it's sort of, or like indirect impact, right? So for instance, a good example might be the Colorado trading for Ryan Johansson. Ryan Johansson is not a hobby superstar, but if he could have a 65, 70-point season, does that make it more likely that Cale Makar and Nathan McKinnon win a Stanley Cup? And by proxy, right, that increases their card. So I think for what's happened at this point, we're looking at more of those situations. The one case, though, that might, I don't know if I'm really convinced, could have a direct hobby impact, we'll call it, is PLD. Pierre-Luc Dubois was traded from Winnipeg for Alex Iafallo, Rasmus Kupari, Gabe Vilardi, and a 2024 second-round draft choice. Kind of a pretty big haul for PLD, actually. It was his best season point-wise in his 6-year career. I'm not sure, though, if he has a superstar ceiling. I'm pretty sure he doesn't. But I think the move could increase his hobby relevancy a little bit, going from Winnipeg to LA. Maybe that'll help kind of get some new fans excited about him. I just don't know. And it really reflects, too. There haven't been it's not like there's been a landfall of PLD sales lately. His 2017 Young Gun PSA 10 popped $396. Since the trade was selling for around $121 US, in early May, it was going for about 82. So, yeah, it's up a little bit. All-time high, 240 back in February 2021. And then looking at the Winnipeg side, the biggest hobby name they got back is Gabe Vilardi. I think the key here is he's 23 years old. Can he stay healthy? That's the huge question. He did play 63 games last year, most he's played in any season. If you recall, he got off to a scorching start and then faded a little bit. Ultimately finished with 23 goals, 18 assists for 41 points in 63 games played. And can he take it to the next step? Will he have more opportunity, maybe more top 6 minutes, power play minutes in Winnipeg? We'll have to see there. Talked about Johansson. Again, I don't think he really has a hobby market. And then looking at trades, Chicago has put a bunch of moves together to try to put some sort of team around Connor Bedard. Their roster pretty empty. They acquired Taylor Hall and Nick Foligno from Boston. Can Taylor Hall maybe have a little bit of a comeback year and kind of score some goals? That would be good. Nick Foligno is kind of a big physical guy. He's pretty old, though, and signed another old guy on free agency, Corey Perry. Added Ryan Donato as well. So it looks like they're trying to put some experienced NHL talent around the kid. And again, these are all in that sort of indirect, right? Are these moves that can help Bedard be more successful and have him have a bigger hobby impact in return. Then, Troy, looking at free agency, it's been a million moves. Again, though, not big players. Trying to go through ones that are noteworthy. Probably the biggest signing for us in our show is, Nashville fans, you just got O'Reilly in the biggest way. 4-year deal, Ryan O'Reilly going to the Nashville Predators. I saw he's going to try to change the quote-unquote culture there, Troy.
That's good. I never heard, what was wrong with Nashville's culture? I never heard any bad stories about them.
And I'm sure O'Reilly's a great guy, and I don't mean this against him, but if you're a guy who's played for the Predators last maybe, let's say, like 3 or 4 years, and you just signed Ryan O'Reilly as a free agent, and you're reading the articles, and it says, I'm coming in to change the culture, that's not the best way to indoctrinate yourself into a new team, I don't think.
Well, and I know the Predators, their GM's retiring, right? Dave Pooley.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that had something to do with it too.
They tried to make as big of a deal out of that at the draft as they did Connor Bedard, for gosh sakes.
I know, every single...
It must be well-liked.
Yeah, it must be well-liked. Every single team that went up there, I think, mentioned him, like, congratulations, which is nice.
Probably the other biggest move is a re-signing. I would say the Ilya Sorokin getting an 8-year deal to stay with the New York Islanders feels like a legacy signing to me there, where, yeah, so he'll be probably for the majority of his career, he'll be an Islander, it looks like. Maybe sort of hobby noteworthy too. The Avs re-signed Bowen Byram, I think, for a couple of years. Oh, here's a really interesting one that you had texted me about as well. Carolina re-signed both Frederik Andersen and Antti Ranta. So that surely puts a little bit of a wet blanket on the Pyotr Kochetkov steam, because two's company, three's a crowd, right?
Yep. I thought that was really interesting. I thought Kochetkov would be there, but I didn't think they re-signed both of them. But
I'd like to know there's got to be more to that story. It just doesn't make sense on face value when you have a team that is pretty close to being a Stanley Cup Finals team, and you think, if you've got a cheap young goalie in the wings, why not re-sign one of your older veterans and use that money to add a skater? So I don't know. There's got to be, in my mind, a little bit more to that story. Were you a little confused or scratching your head on this one that the Penguins re-signed Tristan Jarry to a 5-year, $26 million deal?
What else are they going to do, though? I mean, try to go get Hellebuck? I don't know what else you can do. You trade for Hellebuck because I think he's kind of on the trading block. I don't know. The goalie free agency pool
goalie carousel
was not very enticing this year.
But would you want to go that deep on wouldn't you rather sign a guy for a couple years, a few $1 million a year, and keep some flexibility? Yeah. Because if he's bad, that's a contract that's not getting, nobody's going to trade for that.
You're buying that out, and you're going to have to retain it if you want to retain some percentage.
They went in pretty deep on Tristan Jarry. We'll see how that works out. Well, here's an idea, right? Laurent Brossoit, who had a really nice playoff run with Vegas before getting injured, signed a 1-year deal with Winnipeg for probably $1.5 million, $2 million, something like that. Again, I'm not trying to say that Tristan Jarry probably has a better pedigree than Brossoit, of course, at this point. But I don't know. I just look at the money, and there you go. Keeping on the goalie theme, the Senators, they might have found their goalie, maybe. Jonas Korpisalo agreed to a 5-year deal there. So again, they're committed heavily to Korpisalo. That's I don't know how some of these are going to work out, but we'll see. Should be interesting. Any other notes that I missed so far?
Yeah, I'm going to bring up Jonathan Quick to the Rangers. I thought that was interesting. Doesn't do anything for the hobby, but I always find the Rangers make some unique moves sometimes. And then Ryan Reeves getting 3 years from Toronto. How did anyone give Reeves 3 years? That, to me, is crazy. So good for him. And Toronto will be paying him for the next 3 seasons to basically go out and beat up on people.
So now it's Kaprizov going to get the dog snot beat out of him every game again?
Probably. I know, probably be by Reeves.
If I was Kaprizov, I would have been like, I'll pay the guy. Just resign him. Anything else that happens, we'll definitely keep everyone posted. But that's sort of our update on the draft, NHL trades, and free agency. Now we're going to go to hobby news, and been some interesting kind of news notes and articles that have come out that you spent some time looking into, Troy. Yeah. So I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah. First thing we want to cover is there was an article on ESPN on breaking. So on June 27th, ESPN.com posted an article, and it was kind of weird. They titled it "The Controversial Rise and Uncertain Future of Box Breaks in the Sports Card Hobby." Article is written by Ryan Hawkinsmith. Once you read the article, I'm not a big fan of the title, but I guess it got eyeballs on it, and that's all that
clickbaity.
That's all that title needed to do. It's a very
what stood out to me, but before you get into it, though, sorry, is for a good, I want to say half day or more, it was the lead article on ESPN.com, and so for a box breaking article from the sports card industry as a lead article on ESPN.com, that took me aback a little bit. I was like, whoa. After you go through the article, one of the things I really want to get your perspective on, because I've been thinking about too, is where did this come from? Like, I'm not sure that the way that the media world like this works is that this Ryan guy just was sitting around one day and maybe likes cards like, oh, I think I'm going to write an article on sports cards and put it on sometimes I think that these are a little more concocted than that. And so when you're done, I just want to kind of get your perspective on maybe what you think the intention or motivation was behind this article.
Definitely. Yeah. So the article itself touches on a pretty good amount of topics in the sports card breaking industry. A lot of the article focuses on Rich Layton of Layton Sports Cards and his background, his history, how he got into the hobby, how the business he runs. So that's where that title kind of was misleading. They go into a lot of this stuff on Rich Layton. It also goes into like a brief history of breaking overall, how we got to where we are today. And I actually found really interesting, the first guy that they kind of credited breaking to was this guy, Rick D'Alessandro. And he went by the name of Dr. Wax or Dr. Wax Battle. I had no clue about that. And he was breaking in the mid 2000s. And he kind of broadcast live from his shop in a black wig and sunglasses. He kind of had an alter ego. And that just cracked me up. That was the mid 2000s where I always think of 2010 is when these alter ego people came out, like Dr. Disrespect, all these Twitch guys come flying out and everything. So I thought that was interesting. Now, I like how it tied the whole phenomenon of opening things to the rise in sports cards breaking. So maybe that was kind of the impetus to this, where, I mean, opening new products, though, it's not new, but there's a lot of YouTube videos and people love watching stuff get opened. Doesn't have to be cards, can be video games, anything like that. There's a bunch of channels where people watch unboxings. And it's kind of like this psychology of watching this. You get the mystery, the joy, the risk, instant gratification, and living vicariously through others. So they kind of tie that into the whole breaking and why that's leading probably to a rise in breaking. And again, all that stuff is interesting. Now, where the article got my interest and I started really getting into it was when it starts talking about breaking looking like unregulated gambling and how TikTok basically banned breaks from their platform over the fact that they said it might constitute illegal gambling. Again, there's no regulation. You trusting the card companies, you're trusting the breakers, to be honest. The article goes into that a little bit, but not a lot. Again, it's a very small subsection, but I think it's the most important or interesting part of this article. They kind of mention how there's some steps being taken to kind of, I've said, put a framework around, not regulation, but a framework around breaking, with eBay pre-approving breakers. Now Fanatics is getting involved with their list of stipulations, which we'll talk about in our next story. And the article goes into how it thinks that other social platforms may follow TikTok, but no one's done it. No one followed TikTok. TikTok did it, and everyone else kind of was quiet. Yeah. And then finally, I want to wrap up where they talk about this attorney. They interviewed an attorney, Paul Lesko, and he had an interesting take where he says he has never had a fellow attorney argue that box breaks aren't gambling. And I thought that was really interesting coming from an attorney. And he said he's been predicting congressional investigations, legislation, and regulations for a decade now, but nothing has happened on the legislative front yet.
Okay, if somebody showed you somehow they had the data of like the number of 15, 16, 17-year-olds that spend money on breaks, do you think you would be surprised how big that number is?
Say that one more time.
I guess that was kind of a weird way of just asking. Do you think that there's a lot of like underage kids that spend money on sports card breaks?
I bet. I don't know, because, I mean, you have to get your parents, right? Their credit cards or something.
You're 14, 15. You can have a debit card.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know how big it is. I guess there's more than I probably think it is.
Yeah.
You get back to this whole gambling question, and on its surface, to me, it's gambling. However, I can't say it's gambling. What if I'm a guy that I can't afford the cup? I can't go afford a box of the cup or a case of the cup, but I love the Wild. And I just want to get Wild cards, and I buy a break because I can buy the Wild for a price that I can afford, $200, $300, what it'll say for a case break. To me, that's not gambling. I just want Wild cards. I'm not trying, but how do you differentiate between that and the guy that's in there playing this like the lottery? And where does the legislation, the regulations come in? I think that's, I wish they would have explored that more in this article. And again, the impetus for this article, I'm not 100% sure where this came from. Maybe the news of Fanatics getting in, who's a huge company. Maybe that's what got this guy to kind of go about it because he talks to that Rich Layton, but they don't get into any of the stuff like those Fanatics terms that came out. So I don't know. I'm curious how they landed on Rich Layton to kind of talk to for a majority of the articles about him.
You know, the conspiracy theory I've heard on this that I think actually makes kind of sense.
Ooh, what is it?
I'm not a big conspiracy theory guy, but so Fanatics is already getting heavily into sports gambling. So they're going to have gambling infrastructure. And I think while most people agree that at the end of the day, like if somebody puts a gun to your head and says, is breaking gambling? Most people are going to say, yeah, it is. Right. I don't think boxer breakers love it referred to as gambling because there's a whole lot of scary things that come to that.
Yeah.
But getting back to the Fanatics thing, they're buying sports betting companies. They have a gambling structure around them. If breaking does become regulated and classified as gambling, they're already going to be set up to execute on that, where Whatnot and other platforms probably are not, and could provide them a big competitive advantage. So I can see a scenario where actually Fanatics would be pushing for it to be classified and regulated as gambling.
Interesting. Could be.
I don't know. Conspiracy theory. Just throwing that out there.
Interesting article. Check it out yourself if you haven't read it. Let us know what you think. All right. Next article or next kind of topic we talked about. I know we titled it, Are Fanatics and eBay Going to War? This to me gets, we're opening up a whole can of worms in this hobby, but let's just kind of take a step back. So last week, or I think it was last week or a couple weeks ago, Fanatics released some new terms and conditions for hobby shops that want to buy directly from them. We talked about it a little bit when that kind of news broke, but to give a quick recap, the brick and mortar terms and conditions now include stipulations limiting their ability to sell unopened wax to retailers and to run breaks online. That's the short story. Basically, card shops can't sell boxes to other retailers unless they get it in writing from Topps that is approved. And around breaking, the terms of this original release state retailers may use products for in-store breaks, provided that breaking slots may not be sold or solicited online or to anyone not present in the retailer store at the time of the break. Further,
what have you ever heard of an in-store break?
I've never heard of an in-store break.
That seems like such a weird now I'm sure it'll be the next billion-dollar industry because I can't ever seem to foreshadow anything for myself, but I just don't see that as being feasible.
And then they go on to say further, the direct buying program is for established brick and mortar stores only, which have 4 walls and are not contained within a larger store or environment. Online only retailers, including retailers with majority sales volume derived from online sales, are not eligible for this direct buying program. Okay, we had that. So that's the news. However, then it comes out that now there might have been some changes to the rules based on feedback. We know that there was calls between Fanatics and all these shops. And it sounds like it's being reported that there were some changes, but the reports have been conflicting, is that now after 30 days, shops will be able to sell cases online to other retailers. So that's kind of come out. And that now on the breaking aspect, it gets a little more interesting. What is being reported is that breaking is now allowed without the very restrictive terms and conditions previously announced, except breaking is not allowed via eBay. So even if you are approved by eBay, if you want Topps/Fanatics products, you can't do the break via eBay. In fact, you also can't sell wax on eBay, and you also can't be involved with eBay Live. Shots fired, Josh. Shots fired.
It just seems like an eBay Live versus Fanatics Live turf war to me, doesn't it to you?
Oh, yeah. And Fanatics is going to pull everything they can to put them in the best position to win. They're cutthroat. They know how to run a business. There's a reason they're so successful. And this is just, I think, the start of it.
I just see them continuing to tighten the screws, right? Like every month or so, we're going to get an announcement like this, or it'll leak out somewhere that now Fanatics is restricting you from doing this or that. And I also can't wait until, I shouldn't say I can't wait, because I know we know a lot of breakers and we don't want them to suffer, but doesn't it seem inevitable that they're going to strong arm every good breaker onto Fanatics Live by basically making it miserable for them to get product unless they're on their own live platform?
Yeah. And again, this doesn't really affect hockey right now. This is other sports, but we need to be aware of this because you never know what's going to happen But yes, I think they're setting it up to try to get everyone, or at least the big ones, to them. However, how long before the eBay lawsuit? That's all I want to know. eBay's got to do something. They're gonna respond to this.
Well, I'm sure Upper Deck is sitting there with popcorn in the front row,
wondering what's going on. Yeah,
watching, and what a great opportunity for them to learn. All right, great stuff, Troy. We're going to move on to a 2022-23 rookie review. As we've been doing really since the end of the season, as we've been going category by category, looking back at some of the most significant players and accomplishments that were achieved during last season. And in case you're wondering, I think our schedule is really between now and mid-July. We're going to continue to do that, and then we'll sort of transition into next season and looking ahead from that point and start to figure out like who the comeback player of the year or breakout candidates and all those good stuff would be. And so in today's show, we thought we'd take a look at the top rookies and kind of basing that on their, from 2022-23, their young gun values. I think I picked 6 guys that were young guns are over $100 right now. There's other interesting players too. They just don't have the value, and we don't want to spend 9 hours going through rookie data. And so I think for today's purposes, the top 6 is kind of a good primer into this subject. And I'm just going to go in order of most valuable to least valuable. I think, not to anyone's surprise, Troy, Matty Beniers right now is the most valuable rookie from the 2022-23 season. His Young Gun PSA 10 has a pop at 822, a 32% gem rate. That's something we'll talk about in the context of all these guys, a relatively low gem rate. His Young Gun PSA 10, Troy, last sold for about $180 US. There were 706 secondary market sales in June, so just last month, to give you sort of an idea what the current chase is. And if you put that in context, like Wayne Gretzky was 3,200, number one. And so I think that put Beniers, I know I'll put him in the top 25, probably in the top 15 hockey players. Biggest sale to date, $2,800 US for a raw Young Guns high gloss. That was back in February. And then today, Troy, I could find 15 sales over $1,000 US in Card Ladder sales history. So there is a definitive chase, of course, for Beniers. He finished last season with 24 goals, 33 assists for 57 points in 80 games played. He also had 3 goals, 4 assists for 7 points in 14 playoff games. Of course, good enough to be the Calder Trophy winner for the 2022-23 season based on his regular season. His 24 goals was tied for the Calder eligible rookie lead with Wyatt Johnston. I did want to get some historical data, though, Troy. It's the 186th most by a rookie in NHL history.
Interesting.
So definitely not elite company there from a goal production. His 57 points is the 150th most by a rookie in NHL history. So I think you look at that and, I don't know, maybe not are super impressed. But then on the flip side, people point out that his point per games last year was more than Cole Caulfield in his rookie year, which is true. And the whole hobby is going bananas right now for Cole Caulfield. So just, again, not an all-time rookie season, but I think there are some indicators that he could be good. And to me, and generally, it makes really Beniers kind of a mixed bag right now. It's really tough for me to see what his future would be. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's a top-tier player in a few years. And I guess nor would I be shocked if he ended up somewhat of an average player or a bust. What do you think of Beniers at this point?
I mean, I like Beniers. I think he's got a good start. I like the team he's on. I think they're up and coming, exciting, fun to watch, all that stuff. So next year will be hugely telling in what his projections and what we think he will do in the future.
Do you honestly see him as like an Austin Matthews level player, though?
I don't know. I didn't watch them enough to have like an opinion on.
I just felt he disappeared for stretches, but that's just me. Next guy is, or second most valuable guy is Juraj Slavkovsky. We've talked already a little bit about today. His Young Gun PSA 10 pop 144. So Beniers already has, 822 down to 144 with Slavkovsky. Again, another low gem rate, 35%. Last sold, though, Troy, for $150 US. 546 secondary market sales in June for Card Ladder sales history compared to 706 with Beniers. So 706 to 546. He was a little bit, I don't know if disrespected, but he was not rated super highly. But when we looked at that article from NHL Scouts and Execs as maybe like a weaker number 1 overall pick, still very, very young though, only 19. complicates it again. He had a truncated rookie season, which ended on January 18th when he sustained a quote unquote lower body injury that did not require surgery, but he was going to miss 3 months at that point. And to that point, he had produced 4 goals and 6 assists in 39 games played.
Maybe that's why. Maybe that's why he's ranked 10th in the NHL GM's ranking.
Small sample size, but there's no way to shake the fact that 0.26 points per game in your rookie season is underwhelming. Kind of laughy territory, I guess, out of the gate there. Shots fired there. He does have a huge frame, great skill set. But what most scouts point out again is that lack of like a strong club season, giving him that pedigree. And I did look at basically every stop, and almost more than any other player, he bounced around all over the place. He'd have like 11 games on this team and then 6 games on another and 18 on another. So maybe that's part of the issue, is that people just didn't get enough sample size. And we talk about all the time that having that pedigree is really important, especially as a goal scorer and wanting to be over a half point per game. So I actually went back and I totaled all like 30 of his stops since he was 11 years old, Troy. And NHL.com does a good job of providing all the data. So he had played 236 games prior to the NHL, and he did score 122 goals in those games, which is 0.52 goals per game. So that's not bad. I just think, again, because he does, like anyone, like scouts want to see everything in a nice, tidy basket. They want you to play 55 games with the juniors team and score 75 goals, and then go on to the World Championships and dominate, and then get drafted and translate that to the NHL. That has happened, but of course that's not everyone's path. And so kind of like with Beniers, but maybe for some different reasons, I put Slafkovsky in more of a kind of wait and see approach, I guess I would have to him. And I wouldn't go all in by any stretch at this point, spending big money on his rookie cards.
No, I wouldn't.
Do you agree or disagree?
I wouldn't go all in on him. Plus, I get a little nervous when I hear lower body injury, but didn't require surgery. What happens if he tweaks it right away this season? He's going to be out. They're going to do surgery. I don't know exactly what the lower body injury was. I haven't seen any rumors or even read that much on it, but that injury stuff always worries me coming into like a second year.
100%. The next guy is maybe the little bit of the surprise guy on this list, the one that came a little bit out of nowhere. Some of it, I think, of course, ended up being circumstantial, with Lucas Reichel, who plays for the Blackhawks and, of course, Connor Bedard's team. His Young Gun PSA 10 pop 184, has a 33% gem rate. So again, very low. Last sold for $136 US. There's 296 secondary market sales in June per card letter sales history, so less than half of Beniers, which does make sense. Biggest sale to date is $800 US for Young Guns acetate that just a few days ago at the end of June. 0 sales, of course, at this point of more than $1,000, since his highest sale is $800. Another guy with a small sample size in the NHL last season, although better performance than Slafkovsky. He had 7 goals, 8 assists for 15 points in 23 games played. He's a 21-year-old kid from Germany. Will get tons of attention, of course, this season as the world watches Chicago to see what Connor Bedard does. I think, though, a reason for Blackhawks fans to get excited is looking at Reichel's past 2 years now, where he's played a total of 111 AHL games in Rockford and actually produced pretty well, Troy. 41 goals, 108 points in those 111 games. So almost point per game in the AHL, and you'd have to figure he'll start based on his performance in the AHL, how well he did in limited stint in the NHL, that he's a good candidate to start the season with the club, and we'll see what he does with a full year under his belt. Again, a kid I'm interested to see how this shakes out.
Yeah, this is one where it's just, I can't wait. I mean, a lot of people think he's going to do well with the run on his Young Guns cards after Bedard after Blackhawks got the number 1 pick.
Okay, the next guy that we want to cover is our guy, Troy, Matt Boldy, whose 2022 Young Gun PSA 10 is a pop 424. Listen to this, 27% gem rate.
Wow.
There's 424 PSA 10s out of 1,595 that have been submitted. I should have wrote this down because I was kind of dumbfounded when I saw it too. If you go into the PSA pop report, not only is his gem rate super low, like of this roughly 1,600 cards that have been submitted, I think he's got around like 300 PSA 8s.
Wow.
Which is way worthless at that point. My advice to anybody that wants a Boldy Young Gun PSA 10 is buy the thing, sell your cards raw, and buy the PSA 10 because it is a big-time gamble trying to sub his cards. Largest sale to date is $1,575 for Young Guns Clear Cut Exclusives PSA 9 in June. What's kind of interesting, too, and I don't know if, did I mention this for Slavkovsky or did I? So Slavkovsky's biggest sale was a $1,802 for Young Guns Clear Cut Exclusive. So both Slavkovsky and Boldy, their largest sale is on a card that was just discontinued by Upper Deck.
Uh-oh. I think those other ones replacing it might have some value, too.
Probably. Yeah, probably. There's 4 cards to this point that have sold for more than $1,000 for Boldy. One of the things that's a little bit unique about him is while he's a 2022 Young Guns, he did play 47 games for the Wild in 2021-22, where he put up 15 goals, 24 assists, 39 points that year, which is what got many people excited about him, and I think why he was one of the key Series 1 Young Guns rookies last year. And I guess the sophomore season, I have a really hard time as a Wild fan being kind of fatalist and cynical, digesting it. When you look at the numbers, it wasn't bad. In 81 games played, he had 31 goals, so he's a 30-goal scorer. 32 assists for 63 points. Again, statistically, pretty decent. But this is, I think, a really good example, though, of sometimes numbers don't tell the whole story. And as we watched basically every Wild game last year, and there's a lot expected of him, I think that's why they felt comfortable moving on from Kevin Fiala. And I just think, Troy, for large stretches, Boldy would disappear.
Oh, I agree 100%.
He did step up in a big,
on that. Like, he was so streaky. So streaky.
He did step up in a big way when Kaprizov went down, which was nice. But then Kaprizov comes back and he kind of disappears again. And even though the playoffs wasn't great, did not score a goal in the 6 games against Dallas. Did have 3 assists, but again, disappeared to a large degree. So for our sake as Wild fans, I'm definitely hoping he can take a jump this season. But I don't know, Troy, do you think does Boldy have another level or two, or is he just a 30-goal, 60, 70-point guy?
I haven't seen it.
If you had to bet.
I don't see him having another level from what I've watched, but I don't know. I don't want to be fatalist either, but there was streaks where I just was so frustrated watching him. And right now I would say he's just going to be a 30-goal guy and not break out into 40 or 50, but I hope I'm way wrong on him. For him to replace Fiala, we need him to put up Fiala numbers.
I just don't really recall many dynamic plays.
Yeah.
I think the goals he scores are more right place, right time, which is a skill, and it's an important skill, and I'm not trying to knock that. But he doesn't really do much that makes you go, wow, this guy's good. Okay, next guy, Troy, your favorite, Shane Wright.
Shane Wright.
His Young Gun PSA 10 pop 118, 35% gem rate. Last sold for 120 US. That's pretty strong given all that's happened, and we'll detail it in a second. Pretty impressed that it's still north of $100. He had 414 secondary market sales in June per card ladder sales history. Biggest sale to date, this is a little bit of a weird one to me. I get it, but I think it's still a weird card, is $1,025 US. So this is back in October, right when that 2021 Metal Universe Champion set came out. There's a metallized autographed gold card out of 10. So that would be non-licensed. I would have deep regrets if I'd spent $1,000 on an unlicensed Shane Wright auto at this point, but hopefully it works out for the buyer. Been 2 sales to this point, more than 1,000. It's been an interesting year for Wright, Troy, to say the least. He, of course, had a ton of fanfare coming in the draft. For a time, was projected as the number 1 overall pick. Well, he slid to number 4, put on his Kraken jersey with a snarl, and started, as you like to call it, Troy, the Shane Wright Revenge Tour. Now, maybe the Revenge Tour, though, did not get off to the greatest start. The bus basically got a flat tire
yes,
blown out of the draft.
Yes, it did.
So he was 18 when he was drafted, and he signed the entry-level contract, and there's this agreement for these younger guys between the CHL and the NHL saying, listen, you can't just draft the guy, take him from our league, and stuff him in the AHL. He's either got to play in the NHL or come back to our team for the full year. And it seemed like for probably a little bit too long, the Kraken hemmed and hawed over that decision. They tried him out in the NHL a little bit. Then they must have really decided fairly early on he wasn't ready to be a full-time NHL player, and kind of began this weird period of the Shane Wright Press Box Tour. So went from the Shane Wright Revenge Tour to the Shane Wright Press Box Tour, where he spent most games watching, of course, from the press box. Eventually the Kraken did send him back to the CHL, where he played for the Windsor Spitfires. In total, played 8 games in the NHL with the Kraken last season, scoring 1 goal, 1 assist. I don't know. To me, Troy, this whole, when you kind of go back and look at this, I don't think the Kraken did him any favors. And I'm actually really impressed how well he's done. And we'll kind of go through some of the stats in a minute. Despite all, I mean, what an emotional roller coaster to be put through as a 18-year-old kid.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in, especially when you probably think you should be playing and you're just sitting in the press box watching everything. Yeah, they didn't.
The low point was when his grandparents came to Seattle for a 4-game homestand, and he sat in the press box every game. That was embarrassing. I felt bad for him.
Yeah, felt bad, but again, NHL team, I actually appreciate they don't care that your grandparents are there. They're trying to win every game, and they're going to do what's best. But yeah, it's a rough situation.
So at some point, they decided to send him back to the OHL. He ended up going to the Windsor Spitfires, as we said. Had a pretty good year in 20 games played, 15 goals, 22 assists, 37 points. That's not, I mean, I don't know any context beyond that. I didn't watch him play any games, but then he did return to the AHL and was part of the Firebirds' run to Game 7 of the Calder Cup Finals, which just ended a few weeks ago. And I think the big question is, where does he go from here? Does he start the next season back in the OHL? I think from all that I read I think that's kind of the betting man's favorite to happen, that he would play another year in the OHL.
So he can go back to the CHL for another year. Wow.
Yeah. So now bringing it back to the hobby, right? You might have a Shane Wright card for essentially a Young Guns for a year and a half before he's or before he's a regular NHL player. You still confident on Shane Wright?
No, I'm not. I know you like the underdog story. I want the revenge tour, and I didn't get it, so I'm sad. Hopefully he figures out. Again, young kid, 18. Hopefully they didn't ruin him. But at some point you got to figure it out, and maybe another year in CHL or OHL helps, but I would like to see him produce at the NHL level.
I think like I said, I think if anything, he proved he's at least fairly mentally tough.
Resilient.
From everything we saw. Last guy we're going to look at is Owen Power. His Young Gun PSA 10, pop 498, has a 39% gem rate, one of the higher ones that we've seen so far. Last sold for $106 US, 346 secondary market sales in June per the Card Ladder sales history. Largest sale to date for Owen Power is $1,109 US for a 2023 Young Gun Speckled Rainbow PSA 10. That sale occurred on April 1st. Been 2 sales total, over $1,000 to this point. In his first full NHL season, Troy Power played 79 games and scored 4 goals while putting up 31 assists. Here's a case where we talk about these guys all the time. Everything I've seen, heard, and read is he had a tremendous rookie year. He played a ton of minutes, and you should be really, really excited if you're a Buffalo fan. If you're a hobbyist who doesn't root for Buffalo, again, it's another story where I don't ever see a guy having a huge hobby presence that scores 4 goals in a season, I guess, outside of Lafreniere.
Yep. But Laffy's Laffy's riding the hype train still. I don't think
I think the hype train is about to go off the rails completely.
Owen Power didn't I mean, obviously there was a little bit of hype, but again, D-man, that our assist machines get no love. And that's what it's looking like.
And even to further emphasize that, I went back and looked at his first 2 years at Michigan. He scored 3 goals his freshman year and 3 goals his sophomore year.
Yep.
So how do you expect him to be a 20-goal scorer as a defenseman in the NHL at this point? It doesn't mean it can't happen, but it doesn't seem super likely. So I wouldn't be spending any Austin Matthews money on Owen Power anytime soon. But that's just you do you. So there's, I think, our top 6 rookies from this past year. Anything to add, Troy, before we move on?
No. Thorough analysis. I like seeing the numbers. I like seeing the high sales and not feel so bad about other people spending a lot of money on cards that have dropped in significant value. But no, it's a good overview and good reminder, what we can see happen with these guys.
All right, Trey, we want to make a quick mention for PWCC, of course, a Gongshow partner and sponsor. Thank them very much for supporting us and our show and the hockey hobby. Right now, the current PWCC weekly auction is live with more than 165 hockey cards to choose from. You can head on over to pwccmarketplace.com to check out all the cards. On Thursday's show, like we typically do, we will review our favorite vintage and modern cards from this week's weekly auction, so stay tuned for that. PWCC's June vintage auction is also live and ends in a couple days on July 6th. So they started doing vintage only auctions, I think, to break up the premiere a little bit. There's 5 hockey cards in this month's vintage auction, all very nice, as you would expect. So there's a couple Gretzky rookies. There's a 79 OPG PSA 8.5 that also, Troy, has the PWCC Superior Eye Appeal rating, putting it in the top 5% of all 8.5s. Then there's also a 79 OPG PSA 8. Then there's 2 really nice Bobby Orr rookies, a 1966 Topps PSA 7 and then a 66 Topps PSA 6.5. And then finally a 86 Topps Patrick Waugh rookie PSA 10. Not a lot, but some really good cards. Check out all the auctions and their fixed price marketplace again at pwccmarketplace.com. One of the things we didn't get to do last show, because we had a little bit of a non-traditional show at the draft, is Synergy had come out, and usually that day we give our reaction. We did go out and buy a box like we always do. Opened it. We'll have the pack videos coming soon if they're not out already. And I'll be honest, Troy, with this one, it took me a couple days to get my thoughts squared away on the product. And when I say that, I'm not saying it's a bad product at all. I actually like a lot of the cards, and I think they're interesting. The packs were fun to open, all that good stuff. I can say for sure now, though, that I'm becoming less and less a fan of these boxes that have lots of packs with very little cards. So in the 2022-23 Synergy, the hobby box has 8 packs with 3 packs per card. And it seems like Upper Deck with their new configuration is kind of moving away from this anyways. So again, I give that thumbs up and very much support that. The main issue, though, or stumbling block that I'm having with Synergy is this, and I have this with some other sets too, is I just don't have a great grasp as to what exactly the chase is with this product. Like, what's the card that I'm hoping desperately for, right? When we open up SP Legends Signature Edition, it's hard not to have go through your mind, like, what if there's a Gretzky All-Time Future Watch auto here? Or if we open up a box of Flagship, is there a Young Guns High Gloss? SP Authentic, is there a Future Watch auto of a great player in here? Metal Universe, am I going to get a PMG? Right? What's the card in Synergy that you're just desperately hoping is that I just don't know.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because here's where I like doubt myself. Maybe it's because I'm just don't know enough about the product to understand it. But then I'm like, well, I've done almost 100 shows of a hockey podcast for a year. And if I don't know what the chase is, then maybe that's an indication there probably isn't really that big chase with the product.
Chase is the base cards because they're the rarest thing in the set.
But that's kind of weird, though. We're just not. We've been so trained to think the opposite of that. Again, though, cards are cool. I really like the cranked up acetates.
Yeah,
just probably not a huge chase there. And then I think that this all rolls into. I just wonder if Synergy doesn't have an identity because the set has a vibe. So I'm not saying that like you can tell Synergy cards, but again, going back to I just don't know like what's that identity where you're buying the set in hopes of getting this one card. Does all this make sense to you?
It makes sense to me, and you have a better opinion of it than I do because I'm living vicariously through the box opening videos because I didn't look a lot on the new release of Synergy besides doing the checklist overview and stuff like that.
And I'm starting to get the opinion that I think it's important for every set to have that identity card, or 2 to 3 ideally, but I'm probably getting greedy. On the flip side, though, it's a $100 box. Definitely won't break the bank. You do get 24 cards, which I guess are all considered hits. And so you think about it, I don't know, maybe we should start evaluating boxes by what's the price per hit. Because maybe getting a whole bunch of base cards that aren't worth a lot, although they might look cool. And Upper Deck has been doing a good job, I think, with base cards as a whole in the past year or so. Yeah, I just don't know. So I liked it. I just don't know what to make of it, if that makes sense. So we'll think about it. We'll look at secondary market values and come up, like we do with all these sets, with the value rating later on. As far as what's next, I'm pretty sure we haven't seen anything official from Upper Deck, but it's 4th of July week. It's Canada Day. Yeah. Pretty sure they're taking a little bit of a break right now. There's not a checklist out that I've seen to this point, but we'll keep you posted when we see something.
I want stature.
Yeah, that's a big one for you. Okay, we're going to end the show like we always do, Listener Mailbag. Well, not like we always do. This is a Monday edition.
Yeah, we switched it up.
Of Listener Mailbag. Switching it up a little bit. Monday Mailbag. First question, Troy, Gongshow Discord. Pure on MCP. Nice shout out to my card poster. Do you think hockey doesn't have a downtown or kaboom kind of, or why do you think hockey doesn't have a downtown or kaboom kind of insert? Or why hasn't it been adopted by collectors like Fanimation or other case hits? Well, this kind of bleeds into the synergy topic we just had a little bit. Here, it's a great question. It's actually one of the first really major questions we ever asked on our show a year ago, and I don't even know if I have a better answer for you at this point. There are some great inserts in hockey that I really love, like Jambalaya would be a good example. And there's just a whole bunch more and a lot of good new ones. But you're right. Hockey is missing that crazy, universally known, universally sought after chase. Fanimation is probably the one that gets brought up the most. And I do think it does have one of the common characteristics of the big chases in other sports, like going back to the kabooms or downtowns, is that they all seem to be art-driven cards. Like they're not photo, they're artwork. That seems to be a commonality. But I wonder, and this is just my opinion, you jump in too, Troy, maybe because Fanimations are on canvas stock and they're a little more matte, kind of, they're not shiny, glossy, they don't have like crazy printing technologies that go into them, that maybe that's a little part of it too. But all that aside, and I'll get your input in a second, my hope is Upper Deck has been studied and they're aware of people's opinion on this. And hopefully they're kind of cooking up plans to come up with some of these cards on their own.
Do you put Color Blast in that realm of kabooms and downtowns?
I do, but I would put it in third. Okay. I think I would go 1A, 1B, and then
I was gonna say that's like that's your one that does have actual photos, but it's not the art card. Fanimation,
but it does have the art behind it, though.
Yeah, it's got the whatever kind of color smoke behind it for sure.
Color Blast, yeah.
We, like you said, we've talked about the Fanimation, and you're probably right. There's just it's missing something. It's not in the level of kabooms or downtowns. I don't know if they can change the Fanimation, how it looks, or the stock to try to get there, or do they need to come up with something else?
Next question from Instagram, Cards AH. Whose value is low right now heading into next season that could rebound? I think everyone's forgotten about Josh Norris. So the first thing I'll mention, Cards AH, great question. Like I kind of laid out to you, though, and we will answer your question, but how we're sort of approaching the offseason is we're right now taking a look back, and then we're going to focus more on the offseason dip and then a little more looking ahead. The reason why I say that is we haven't done like a deep dive into this yet, although we plan to. The way my brain works, at least, Troy, is I take things very linearly.
No.
Right? So I focus on the now and worry about what's ahead later. I do think Josh Norris, if he can stay healthy, is a good candidate to bounce back. But that's been a big issue for him. Again, not having the benefit of have done the research. A couple other guys that come to mind is I think Austin Matthews, believe it or not, could be considered a potential bounce back candidate.
Sidney Crosby.
Yeah. And then maybe Andreas Svechnikov from Carolina, another guy that missed time due to injury. Any guys jump to?
This is your realm. I can tell you who I want to PC.
Okay, next question from Instagram, JB Hockey Cards. I just discovered some extra silver spots on my Yuri Slavkovsky clear-cut Young Guns. They are right in between the two lines that run on top of his name on the Young Guns design at the bottom. The rest of the card looks super clean. So to cut to the chase, should I take the risk on grading the card at PSA? What I would do, JB, is I would look up what does a PSA 9 go for and evaluate what you got into the card and your grading costs, and to say, okay, if this does get a 9, do I make up enough room because of the grade where it's worth it? If a PSA 9 roughly sells for what a raw card sells for, I would probably just sell it raw, because as you know, sometimes you send a card in hoping for a 10 and you come away with an 8.
Yeah.
That's bound to happen. So that's the way I would look at it.
I would say, do you have a friend at PSA that's a grader? Talk to them, because we hear those stories about, oh, your buddy works at PSA, just send it to him, have a grade. No, I'm just kidding. Follow Josh's advice.
Next question, Instagram, Top Shelf Cookie Sniper 88, one of our favorites. What are players you're looking to buy with upside this offseason? This is kind of the first thing, again, that we're still in that looking back mode, so I haven't done all my own even personal research yet. And we'll get to that very, very soon. But just off the top of my head, and I've been kind of beating the drum on Timmy Stützle for a long time now. He's a guy that I'm very, very interested in. I still think is under the hobby radar a little bit. And then the other guy that really for the past few months I've been thinking about is Cole Caulfield, but honestly, his cards are going so nuts right now. I'm not even 100% sure it's a great buying opportunity because that's the bandwagon that everyone seems to be jumping on. Is there anyone else at this point that's standing out to you?
Oh, I keep thinking about my 100 greatest players to wear an NHL number collection that I want to build, and I got to really start going at it. Maybe this off season's when I start to do it, even though some of those guys might have some upside. It doesn't really answer the question, but
can I throw one at you that I've been thinking about, and super biased, of course? Do you think Kaprizov could have a little bit of a bounce back? I'm not saying like his young guns, but his point production was way down because he missed a lot of games last year.
The problem with Kaprizov is who's he going to have around him to help him?
I know. It's a stupid team.
Just, he's a great player, but the supporting cast ain't going to be there the next, 2 years? Then we get out of Parisian Suter's buyout.
Well, they even got, as much as
Sam Steele
railed on Sam Steele, they got rid of him too. So who's going to be at the center? I don't.
Well, who do we sign? Lettieri and I can't remember the other guy's name. Starts with an L too, I think.
That Lettieri guy is Lou Nanner's grandkid, you know? Okay, next question. Instagram goalie.42. This is a Troy question.
Right. Talk about my stuff.
I
want to talk about my stuff.
Yeah. What are you guys going to do in about 2 weeks after you reach the NHL's greatest player to wear number 99? Will you start a series with the second best player to wear number 1? I know I'd really miss the segments. You got one fan, Troy, that really enjoys their segments.
We get good feedback.
I know we do.
All right. Great question. So let's think about this. We actually started the segment on our 24th episode. So Josh, do you remember who it was? You remember who 24 was? I'm not expecting you to.
Who was it?
I will give you a hint. He was recently released from ESPN.
Subban?
No, 3 weeks ago.
Kevin Weeks?
Nope. Chelios.
Oh, yeah.
Subban's still there, right? He didn't get released, did he?
Yeah, I was just panicking.
No, didn't expect you to know, but that was the first one, was Chelios. So we started on episode 24. So what's going to happen is we're going to go from 99, and then we're going to actually do 00 and 0 for episode 100. Then episode 101, we will do number 1 until we get through episode 123, which would be number 23. Then it's up in the air what we do. Might do the second best for another round. We'll see. We'll probably solicit some feedback from listeners. I know we've gotten a lot of actually feedback from people that they like the segment. So we'll see if we keep doing it or change it up or we do something else. But that's the plan for now.
I just want to know when you plan to have your, what's the word you use with your mascots? The like Bowie and Gritty.
Deranged, deranged mascot.
Deranged mascots. Yeah, when you're going to have your deranged mascot.
We only got 2. We got Gritty and Bowie.
Just go back and forth. Okay, next question from Oil Country Collectibles. 3-hour podcast in the making. Not quite. More like an hour and 45 minutes. With the amount of free agency signings this morning, which players do you see get a bump in their recent signings with the new team? We kind of went through this a lot earlier, Oil Country. I honestly think none of these moves will cause a big hobby bump for anyone. I guess how's that for fun? It's not the headline we want, of course, but it's just what it is. There's an outside chance maybe for PLD, again, if he lights it up in LA, but I'm not counting on him having a Tage Thompson coming out party. Do you agree with that or disagree with that,
agree.
Troy?
I remember sending you a note when I was watching all the signings and stuff come through on NHL's Instagram. I'm like, blah. None of these were really hobby exciting. But now that I've said that, I'm going to complain about something. NHL.com has the worst free agency / trade tracker. It's like paragraphs and last names only on some of them. I'm like, that doesn't help a lot of people. I found sportsnet.ca, fantastic tracker. It has, listen, they're smart about it. It has the signings tracker and then a little filter if you want to see the trades. And you can flip back and forth between trades and signings. And you can search for teams. Fantastic tracker. That's the one I'm using.
Okay, next question. A good one from Instagram, Gaza18.77. Are there cards from any other hockey league that you collect? If not, which league would you like to start trading cards from? Let you take the lead on this one.
So I do not collect any other leagues, but it was just announced that a new women's pro league is launching in 2024. Basically, if anyone knows anything about this, there was a fracture between the current pro women's league and the PWHPA. So you basically we're in a situation where the best women's players in the world were not playing pro hockey. That's where it's sad. Stupid. Like no one, great. Like why do we have all these Olympians sitting out and not playing pro hockey? However, that should all change with the new agreement. Why I say this is I'm assuming at some point Hockey Cards will eventually come out for this league, and I will personally PC any players I have coached at Minnetonka because I know we're going to have some players in that league.
Yeah, I don't collect any other hockey cards from other leagues, too. I will admit, though, I get envious at some times with our Canadian friends and how they get or tend to get all these sets for Team Canada and juniors. Not that I get it why Upper Deck doesn't do it for Team USA, primarily because we're probably not all that great, but I would collect those maybe if they had them for Team USA. Then did you see in Discord, Troy, that Upper Deck has a 2022-23 PHF women's hockey set coming out?
They do, and that thing was announced a while ago, so I don't know why it's not out. Was it announced in like January of this year, if I remember right? Yeah, I remember we might have touched on the story, but I don't remember the cards ever coming out.
We'll have to look into that. Okay, next question from Instagram, Kevin M. Cormier. When did SPX fall from the top tier of rookie cards? In the early 2000s, it was up there with the Future Watch Auto. When I started paying attention again to the hobby a few years ago, I haven't heard it mentioned much since then. You got an opinion here, Troy?
I don't know. My opinion was collector preference. We've talked about this where in today's hobby for rookies in the hockey hobby, it's the big three are the Young Guns, Future Watch Auto, Cup RPA. That's where we sit, and then all the other rookie cards are kind of on the periphery, and that's just how it is. And things. Yeah, go ahead.
Things change, right? Because just like what Kevin's saying, when you're right, Troy, and we talk about all the time, Young Guns, Future Watch Auto, Cup RPA. 10 years from now, that probably won't be the case.
Yep.
If I had to pick any of those, I'd say the Future Watch Auto is the most at risk just because of the high.
Yeah, $9.99.
I would have said Young Guns, but that's got the brand heritage. Now they got the numbered ones coming, and more number in the 101 coming out. So I think that may change the game there. But yeah, it is interesting how you get almost over like these every decade. It seems like collector preferences change a little bit. Okay, last question from Maniac Hockey Cards on Instagram. Do you think there's any chance we get any of the big rookies in Series 1 of this year? So I'm assuming by big rookies, you're talking about like Fantilli or Bedard. There's almost no chance of that, Maniac. The biggest rookies in Series 1, I'm guessing, are going to be Matthew Knies and Luke Hughes. They're the holdover rookies from last season. Remember now, Upper Deck produces their flagship sets and others in Italy. And so overseas, and production times are a little bit longer. They have to ship them overseas, get them through customs, and it's basically limited them to holdover rookies, so guys that have played in the season prior, because one of the criteria for being a Young Guns, you have to have skated in your NHL jersey, so they don't have the rookie cards like we saw in the early 90s where you have like a Nicholas Lidstrom in his Team Sweden uniform or in a college uniform or AHL or CHL, something like that. So I think my best guess is Matthew Knies and Luke Hughes for Series 1. Then we would see Bedard and Fantilli if he plays in the NHL in Series 2. Okay, that's our show for this Monday. Again, have a great holiday weekend if you're in the U.S. If you like the episode, please leave a rating review on Apple, Spotify, or whatever podcast app you listen to us on. If you love the show, you want to support us and want to chat with us on the Hockey Cards Gongshow Discord server, please consider a $5 a month donation. There's still a few spots left in our out of 99 support level tier on Patreon. The link is in the show description, in our Instagram profile, TikTok profile. You can search Hockey Cards Gongshow on the Patreon website at patreon.com or go to hockeycardsgongshow.com and click on the Become a Patron link. Follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube. And Troy, the Hockey Cards Gongshow podcast is a production of Dollar Box Ventures LLC. We will see you all on Thursday.